Okay, well, it's a bit scary coming to Sweden, which is one of the most connected countries in the world, and talking about, you're top of all the league tables, and yet you asked me to come and talk to you about digital inclusion. So I'm hoping that we're doing something interesting or different. Maybe the size of the problem is so big in the UK that we have ambitious plans, and you just feel sorry for us. But anyway, I'm really pleased to be here. And maybe there are some similarities. We started our journey 7, 8, 9 months ago in this particular piece of work, and we have an election in about 1 month's time. And the period before an election is an incredible time because politicians and officials, everyone's having new ideas about how to do things better. So it's different to it's a different point in the cycle. We're allowed to be brave and ambitious and say, get out the mad idea you had and say, what about this? We could try this. So I think you have an election coming up towards the end of the year. So, maybe that crazy idea you've had in the back of your brain, you should dust it off and bring it out and tell people about it now. So maybe that's similar. Anyway, if I'd have come last week, and in fact in your agenda, you have me down as digital inclusion and working for the champion for digital inclusion. But because of this speech that the Prime Minister made on Monday, we have a new job. We are now, I work for the UK digital champion, not the champion for digital inclusion. And it's a big, big difference because our original job, we were asked to be a disruptive force, an independent voice for the people who are not yet on the internet. A small, not-for-profit organization with a small grant from government, just to make a fuss and a noise about, be a voice for these people that have never used the internet. And we started to make some arguments about why it was important to do something about this, and we've been too successful. And so what the Prime Minister announced on Monday, which I'm still excited about, and I'm trying to understand how we deliver on what we've been asked to do. But what the Prime Minister essentially said was that we will put the needs of the people who've never used the internet, who are the heaviest users of government services, at the very center of the way that we design our online public services. Now that is a huge change because the way we design online public services in the UK, I don't know about Sweden, is for people like me and Annika. That's how services are designed. They're not designed in a way that makes them incredibly useful for the people who actually use government services the most. And so this is a huge change, and our job is to carry on being a voice for people who have never used the internet, but also now to advise government on how to change the way services are delivered so that they meet the needs of this group of people, which is a huge change. And to make that happen, the Prime Minister has announced that Martha Lane-Fox, my boss, will become the chair of a new unit in the Prime Minister's office in the middle of government to bring together all of the capabilities across government that we need, that have been working on inclusion, that have been working on design of government services, into one place to try and embed the needs of those that use government services most at the heart of how you deliver services. If I'm talking about it's so exciting, it's such a huge change, and as I say, I'm now starting to get a bit scared about how we deliver this. We are 5 or 6 people in a very small unit, and the reason I was late is I spent all day yesterday talking to people working in the Prime Minister's and the Cabinet Office about which people can help us do this job in the next 2 or 3 months. And what we will do is we will make our plans and present them to the new administration when they come after the election. So we will have, for the new Prime Minister, whoever that is, we will have a high-level strategy and some recommendation on what this unit should look like and what we should do. So I'm no holiday during the election. Usually you have a holiday during the election. This year I'm working. So that's a very long introduction to a first slide. But as I say, a week ago, it would have been a very short introduction and I would have been moving on. We don't talk about digital inclusion very much in our office because it feels a bit nerdy, it's very public policy. So we talk about Race Online 2012. We have a campaign to help as many people as possible get online in the UK by 2012. It's a big year in the UK. The Olympic Games will be there, so there's a sense of national urgency to get things done and make our country seem like a good place by then. So we are riding that wave a little bit, but also it's about showing a sense of ambition. And so we've rebranded our team. We're called the Race Online 2012 team, not the Champion for Digital Inclusion team or the Digital Champions team. And we are doing a huge amount of work with big corporations and small charities and all other organizations about getting on board the Race Online 2012 challenge to see how many people we can help in the next 2 or 3 years. You thought I'd never move on to the next slide, didn't you? Okay, I only have like 8 or 9 slides, so it's not so terrible. This is the UK's digital champion. Many of you may or may not know her, but in the UK she's very famous. Her name is Martha Lane Fox, and she is famous for a number of reasons. One, she was the founder of a huge internet company called lastminute.com. Which in the UK, it still is. I think in Europe, it's one of the biggest travel integration websites. And unusually for an internet entrepreneur, she actually made money out of this business. So, you know, and it still exists, yeah? And so it floated publicly, she made money. So she was only in her 20s. So she's 33, 34. So she was in her 20s when she did this. She was very famous. And then, unfortunately, she had a terrible personal tragedy where she was involved in a very bad car accident, only just survived, spent 2 years almost in hospital. She broke 26 bones. So, there was a kind of big compassion for Martha in the country, and she's seen as a real icon. And she attracts lots of media attention, no matter what she does. And since her accident, she's done a huge amount of work around social justice issues. And Martha talks about the internet transforming her life. She talks, obviously, the business that she set up and run transformed her life. It made it very rich. But secondly, when she was 2 years in hospital, it was her connection to the world and helped her get back on her feet. So she talks about the internet being powerful to her personally for those reasons. And Martha I talk fast. Martha speaks about 3 times as fast. I'm sorry. And her mantra to us always and to everyone is be ambitious, go fast, and be optimistic. And that's a very different way of thinking. I've worked in government for 10, 11 years before I took this job. And it's a very different way of thinking because we're very conservative and we like to be incremental. And she's like, no, be ambitious. What does it look like if we get to the end? And how do we work back? So it's a different way of looking at things. Okay, so this is, as of last week, this is how we defined our role. This is what we've been doing for the last 6 to 9 months. So because you're only a team of 5 or 6 people, you have to try and focus on a few things that you think you can do well. So the first thing that we focused on is just being a critical friend to government, but also to colleagues in industry and in third sector organisations. And so the work that we commissioned from PwC on the economic case was part of doing this job of supporting the government where we could, but also challenging it. Second role is around awareness raising across all the organisations in the UK and in the media to raise awareness about the issue of digital inclusion. And as I've mentioned, we use our Race Online 2012 campaign as a way of doing that. And the third and very important thing we decided to do is we are convinced that the best way of helping people get online is by someone just like them helping them. Yeah, so whether that happens to lots of us in our lives in the way that we learn new things, but if you go out into the community and you see how people are learning, it's usually someone just like them, just helping them with the first few steps. So we've been really passionate about trying to get more resources in terms of money, but also more joining up. There's quite a lot of community infrastructure out there. We've been trying to bring people together to make sure there's no wrong door in for anybody who's looking for some help. So that's the third line of what we're doing. So we were quite focused on the things that we thought we could make a difference on. Now, this is, we don't really use slides very much in our office. So this is the 3 things I wrote on my hand. Every time we talk to a politician or every time I give a speech like this is the only 3 things on my hand. And that is there are 3 arguments for digital inclusion in the UK anyway. One, which is the thing we started with, which is we believe there's a strong social and moral case for digital inclusion, yeah? We know that children with internet at home do better in their exams. We know that some jobs are only available online. We know that some forms of entertainment now are only available online. We know that as the number of people that are not online gets smaller, the disadvantages they face are greater. Yeah? So we know there's a really strong, and that's where Martha started. That's where I started. But that's not always enough when you're trying to convince the finance department or politicians that we need to make progress. So one of the first things we did was commission this work into the economic case for digital inclusion. What were the hard economic benefits of getting all of our offline population online? And actually, I think we've proved that there's an overwhelming case for doing it. It's a waste of money to leave these people offline. That's
percentage were excluded then in the beginning of your journey?
I'll go in a minute, but we have nearly 20% of our population has never, 10 million people have never used the internet.
Wow.
And I'm going to show you some numbers, but 4 million of those people are the most socially excluded people in our country as well, and the heaviest users of government services, as we always say. So there is an overwhelming economic argument. I will give you the numbers about why. What I'm trying to do is tell you the story and put the economics inside, rather than just give you lots of numbers in a report. And the third argument that we make is, we can do this. I'm sorry for stealing from Mr. Obama's speechwriters, but it's hard not to, because it's such a great phrase. But the serious point underneath that is we have a huge amount of community infrastructure, both in terms of human capital and technology, in our schools, in our libraries, in our community-based centres where we invested in raising their ICT capacity. And so, do we make best use of it? Are we sure that there's that? I know for a fact that people are wandering along to a library and saying, "Can you help me get on the internet, please?" And people are saying, "No, we only do that on a Thursday." And there's a place just 100 meters along the road where they could get help, but they don't get signposted to it. So we have lots and lots of computers down in our communities, and lots of people who could help someone use them. And it's quite easy. We just need the 4 in 5 people who are on the internet to help the 1 in 5 who are not. It's really simple. It doesn't take really rocket science, some brilliant brain, or huge amounts of money. It just takes the 4 in 5 of us that can do it to help our colleagues that can't. So we have a very positive message that we think we can do this. And that's it. That's all we do when we talk to politicians in the UK. That's the argument we've been running for the last 6 to 9 months. How am I going to get this going? So, some numbers. I think that first argument, the internet is changing all of our lives, and some people are being left behind. This is just kind of giving some examples of the way it's changing our lives. So nearly every adult in the UK that is online uses the email as their daily method of communication, which means those who aren't offline are missing out on that. In terms of finding work, I think it's something like 300,000 or 400,000 jobs through the government's own job service were only advertised online last year. So that means a huge number of jobs that people who are offline do not get access to. And we know that 11 million adults looked for a job online last year in UK. And probably most importantly, for the economists out there, 90% of new jobs in the UK require basic ICT skills. Tough to get a job if you don't know how to use the internet. And saving money. So we did some work on how much do people save on average by paying their utility bills online and by shopping online. And it's about £560, I guess 600 euros. Oh, now it's 560 euros, I guess. It's almost 1-to-1, huh? But yeah, so it's about that much. I have to say, for the lowest income families in the UK, it's a lot less than that. Their saving is about 270, 280 pounds. And that's part of the problem, because the investment for them the cost and benefit is quite close. Whereas for us, there's a huge benefit to being online. But that's just an illustration of why it's hard to participate if you're not online. So this starts to get us into the economic argument. So Annika, you were asking me the figures, yeah? So it's 10.2 million people in the UK have never been online. I told you I was surprised you invited me to come, because we have a big problem in the UK. And of those, 4 million are amongst the most socially excluded. And this is really important, because if you look at the 10 million people, nearly 70% of those are over 65. Yeah, so the biggest single group of people that are not online in the UK are over 65. But some of those people are making a choice about a later time in life whether they really want to be, to get involved. We would like them to. We think there's a case. But also, some of them are reasonably wealthy, reasonably well off, yeah? And so there are things we might do to help them, to nudge them along. But if you look at the most excluded 4 million people, it's really interesting that the unemployed and the people out of work are as big a group as the over 65. This is quite important for policymakers, because otherwise everybody says, oh, you're just talking about well-off older people who don't really feel they want to, you change their life at this point. But it's not. For some of our, for our most excluded groups in the country, this is an issue about people who are out of work, lacking skills to get back into work. And it's about adults in families with school-aged children who are not confident with technology, who cannot support their children's learning. So these are very important issues for policymakers, which is why it's important to focus on those groups of people. Why should we care? Well, I mentioned the savings online. Actually, our bottom 20% of households by income are missing out on over £1 billion of savings every year. People without the internet pay about €300 a year more in energy costs because they can't pay online and through direct debit. Yeah? I keep asking, why don't the utility companies provide people computers and access? Because in a way, because the government keeps helping people with grants to help them with their fuel bills. And you just think, well, hold on, you're doing this every year. Maybe there's a smart way to reduce the cost of them for energy, just like everybody else. And I've made this point before, but this is very important, that the 4 million people who are incredibly heavy users of government services. They use government services a lot, and the social costs of allowing people to fall through the net are very high. I say falling through the net in both senses, falling through the social safety net and leaving them offline. And this was the big number at the end that really made a difference to politicians in the UK, was that if we could move the 10 million people now that aren't online, and we got them online, and they just moved one contact with government online a month, the government would save almost £1 billion a year, 900 million a year. That's not the savings from turning things off or closing down an office or anything. That's just from the incremental benefit. Yeah. So it's just such a huge saving, and so that's allowed us to link a very positive social change to a very hard economic benefit that politicians of all parties have to save money from the cost of delivering public services in the UK. Whichever party wins the election will announce operational efficiencies. And so we can, nobody wishes for a fiscal crisis, but out of adversity usually come some opportunities, and this is one opportunity. So we've made that link in the UK. So this is, I'm not going to spend too long on this, but this is the argument that Martha runs, which is, let's not think about going from 80% of people online to 83% or 85 or 90. Let's think about getting nearly 100%, and we are quite serious about 100%. So we know that for some people, it's likely that their access will be intermediated by somebody else. It might be a carer, and we know that some people will need quite a lot of help in the early stages to start using things. So this is not just a free-for-all, but we are asking people to be ambitious, and we are challenging our charities in the UK to say, don't write off your own constituents. This is possible. We can help people get access to these things, because there are huge benefits. So, things like we are talking about making applications for school online only. And everyone says, well, that could mean that some people are missing out on, everyone must be able to access, not everybody's online, but actually we're achieving that in some areas, almost 100%, because schools are supporting parents to use the technology. And guess what? Parents from low-income families are getting much better information about their choices of schools, which they never had before. Yeah, because in their social networks, there's not enough information about which schools are available in the local area and which ones are good at different things and which one may suit their child. So they had a lack of information. So in a strange way, by forcing the transaction online, it means those parents have got a much broader set of information. And that's really important, that we improve the quality of the service as we bring it online as well. So this whole thing about trying to imagine a 100% online future and working back from it. And this was the big figure that we got from the PwC report, the overarching figure. When we added all the benefits up from getting everybody online in the UK, they came up with a figure of 22 billion of benefit to the UK economy. It's a powerful figure, but I have to say the government transactions online is more powerful, because it's very specific and people understand it. And there's too many reports with big numbers. You know, everything that you could do always has a big number attached to it. So it's a good number, but the specific number about government transactions was stronger. And this is one of the final points I want to make, is to achieve near universal access, you have to focus on the very hardest people, yeah? It's no good. We've got 10 million people who haven't used the internet. Some of them, we could probably just chip away. The market will help some of them. Or there's little things we could do to encourage them. We could focus our effort on those because they're the easiest people. But in 3 or 4 years' time, if we did that, we'd still have this 4 million people at the end. So our argument is you must start with these people, the very hardest to reach people, if you want to achieve almost complete universal access. But also, if you want everyone in your country to be able to use your online services, these are the people whose needs you need to focus on. So this has been absolutely core to our argument. And there are some other bits of our argument, like the 500,000 children in the UK who live in a family where there's no access to the internet. We have such large evidence of the impact of having internet at home on exam results and lifetime earnings that it's kind of morally difficult for people to defend the fact that some people don't have access at home. And I've got some things here about some of the barriers, which I'm sure will be similar elsewhere. There are, people on low incomes have struggle with the costs. We have issues with people on low educational levels. Are hugely overrepresented amongst our non-internet users. And we have, we had 3 classic barriers: motivation, access, and skills as the 3 reasons why people generally don't get online. And I'm sure other speakers will go into great detail about the skills issues. Oops, I've gone backwards. Nearly got there. Right, so what's happened in the last 9 months? Well, the first thing we shouldn't claim complete credit for, because they were starting to work on it before we got our jobs. In fact, I was working on this before I started working for Martha. We have a £300 million, a huge program in the UK, to help low-income families with school children have access to the internet at home. This is a straight subsidy program. This is a program that parents on very low incomes, so a household income of less than £16,000 a year.
They would get both the physical computer and the skills.
1 year's connection.
1 year.
Well,
okay.
because it's really hard in the UK. We have a problem with capital funding and revenue funding, and we often get lots of capital funding, but it's very hard to get revenue funding, consistent funding year on year. And so the reason it's 1 year is that's the most we could capitalise, we could make into a physical thing. So people get that. It's a very market-led type of solution, although it's a subsidy, because people apply and they get a credit card, a MasterCard, with the money loaded on for what it is they're going to get, and they get a choice of suppliers. We've accredited 5 or 6 of the big market players who have reached a standard. This has to work out the box. So a family has to get it out the box, and it has to work straight away with all the safety software for a 12-year-old ready to go. So it's not the normal thing you would buy on a high street, although it is available on the high street. We've made the manufacturers do some extra work to make it safer and work out the box and be more appropriate.
And then you would get education in physical person or online? Or?
Well, the educational software is wrapped in, but this is obviously in partnership with the schools. So this is about supporting children with their schoolwork and parents to engage with school and access other opportunities. This scheme had a pilot, so we had about 12,000 families who benefited last year, and it's just rolled out nationally in January, and in the first 3 months there have been 200,000 applications. We have 70,000 grants given, 50,000 computers in homes for children, and we've only had 9 cases of fraud. So everybody said, if you do this, these people, they are fickle, and they will sell them on eBay, and and in all the newspapers, typical socialists, giving money to, these people will sell them. In the pilot, we had 1 case of fraud out of 12,000 people. We have 9.
Bedrägeri alltså.
9 cases out of 40,000 so far. And we can check, because they are monitoring all the eBay and cash converters, and they are serial numbers on this machine. So it's possible to check. And it's people, don't steal from their children. You know, it's it's unusual for people to do that. So this is a big program for us. It's going very fast. We have a central administration of it. We don't leave it to the local authorities because we want it to be fast and consistent and no postcode lottery, as we call it. So this is happening now, and we're hoping it means that we can get pretty much all families with school-aged children having internet at home. And our issue, as you pointed out, is how do we keep people online beyond the year? So we're working on it. We'll see. This is the second point. What have we done is we did make this case to the Prime Minister that the community-based centres where people access the internet, that we'd given them a huge resource in 2000, 2001, huge resources to set up, but then we'd starved them of money. And so they were losing their staff, losing their volunteers. This was becoming run down. And so we successfully argued with the Prime Minister that when he announced a lot of cost savings just before Christmas, that the nice thing he would do would announce 30 million extra money for our community-based ICT access. And also this showed success to everybody. It made everybody think that the government took inclusion, digital inclusion seriously and got everybody galvanized and excited in a sense of momentum again, that we can do this. We've launched Race Online 2012. And I think in a few weeks' time we'll announce like 10 huge commercial partners. I think we may not get to 1 million, but they're going to commit to getting hundreds of thousands of people, helping their own employees, helping the families of their employees, helping their customers. There are businesses whose main customers are very low-income families or older people. So we can work with those businesses to it's benefit to them to help their customers get online, help their staff get online, help the families of their staff get online. And they get that as soon as you talk to them about it. So Race Online 2012 just gives them a vehicle to do that. And so I mentioned this before, pass it on is a big part of Race Online 2012. How do we get the 80% who are online to help the 20%? And do we need lots of government or do we need more of a viral campaign, just to, Annika, could you go home and, is there someone in your family that you could help? Yeah, okay, so it's that kind of thing. And I mentioned the People's Task Force. That has met twice now, which is people like Boris coming together to explain to us what we need to do to make a difference.
Dialogue is constant, where you always check with the users, what do you need?
The group is people who've got onto the internet in the last year, and from one of our disadvantaged groups, and it's people who've formally been excluded, have gone through the journey and have a story to tell about.
They're key messengers for their friends.
But also we can check they're very powerful with politicians, as I said, but also we can check our ideas against them. I said before we should dust off our ideas in an election year, but some of our ideas actually, they sound good to us, but if you talk to people out in communities, they're not so sure. It's like, here's a good example. We think volunteering and passing it on is a really good idea. It's very informal, it doesn't cost a lot of money, it engages everybody. And we thought that intergenerational volunteering was really good. That getting our school kids, our digital natives, to help older people. And it is a good idea, except feedback from people on our People's Task Force and other older people that we've spoken to is actually, at the level of grandchildren, and they are a bit too impatient, and it's quite hard for them for older people to learn. So that's just a piece of feedback that we've incorporated. We are still doing some intergenerational stuff, but we're concentrating on like people of my age helping my father.
Peer help.
Yeah, a little peering up rather than too far. So maybe you already knew that, but we learned that. We learned that. So we're trying to learn as we go along by talking to those people. And then this was the what's happened in 9 months, and then this is what happened on Monday. So this is the quote that the Prime Minister put in his speech, and I'm going to read it. I've not read off my slides, but this one I will. He said that we will ensure that services are designed around the needs of those that use them most, putting the needs of the 4 million people who are amongst the heaviest users of government services, but who have never used the internet, at the heart of our strategy, rather than letting them literally slip through the digital net. And as I say, it's just words and there's no money attached to it, but it's incredibly important because it just gets everybody thinking in a different way. That's our story to date. I hope that I've probably been passionate and talked too fast.
Oh, we love passion. Passion is...
but that's it for me. And I'm happy to take questions about anything.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm sure the audience is extremely excited. I just must add that I once interviewed Anita Roddick, the one who founded The Body Shop, and I asked her, what do you look for around in people you want to engage? And she said one single thing: passion. And then I said, what about militant vegans? No problem. Passion can always be redirected and used in a beneficial way, which I think is beautiful. So passion is irresistible.
Martha uses Anita as a role model. She was asked the other day, who do you treat as a role model? She said Anita Roddick.
She was, unfortunately, she's no longer with us, but she was wonderful. Could we please then ask, we have Mentimeters, number 15, as a direct reaction. This will be in Swedish, but what we think when we hear this, should we just do copy-paste of this English example? So the first one is yes, just copy it, steal it. Second, no, it wouldn't work in Sweden. Third, well, we need to modify it to Swedish conditions, and that would be great. No, we can do this by ourselves, or we import Gordon Brown.
I go 3. I press 3, okay? But do what you like.
So please... Sorry?
Digital Inclusion Task Force.
Should that be the 6th one, you mean?
Is that the work Walker is doing?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. The copy of the model of the idea of having this lobby group, as it was in the beginning.
Task force.
The champion. A group that would really work on influencing politicians and other decision makers, and then spread it. And also, of course, the idea of using the ones, the least. There is an expression, the least privileged group.
Socially excluded, we say. When we say socially excluded, it's official in the UK. We have this dashboard of exclusion, and if you have more than 2 or 3 of these things, you are formally at risk of social exclusion. So when I say social exclusion, it's got a specific definition in a way.
Okay, exclusion, to use them as the center, as the core. Just to get a little idea, if we are extreme, if you really advocated this so that we want to copy it straight off, because we believe that we are so superior in Sweden, but it wouldn't surprise me if we have a lot to learn. Please push your buttons if you haven't. And so you thought that number 3, you immediately captured that modified to Swedish conditions, that would be maybe the winner. Yeah, you would go for that one. Yeah, you're right. 72%, or even 17% said, "Let's do it now." And,
well, that's good too.
And nobody says that this wouldn't be relevant in Sweden. Wonderful.
Gordon Brown may be happy to see the result.
Yeah,
in 2 months' time, you may come over and
we
see
don't know.
Yeah.
If you would just pick one single application, I don't know if there is a general one at all, but what you have learned is the important to get over the threshold.
Yeah.
Is it to have your email? Is it to be able to go? What would be the first?
It's a principle. Do you know what I mean? The principle is, Martha says this in every speech, is that to see the 4 million, this is our socially excluded, see the 4 million as the first leap, not the final hurdle. And that's
not the final
hurdle.
Which means?
Barrier.
Okay.
Because usually people look at things and say, we'll do everything, and then at the end we'll come to this very difficult group of people. And our argument is, no, it's
like
the first
springboard.
The first leap, they're the springboard. Look at them, understand their needs, help them first. And that will be your springboard into helping everyone. So that's my...
So it's not a physical application for them. I just mean the first entry.
The first entry for them is what they're interested in.
Okay, I mean, you go for passion there as well.
They are interested in. One of the things we like, don't try and design one size fit. I mean, it's good to have tools that help people.
But we love that in Sweden. We expect one universal tool to be the ultimate solution.
We have one, but we find that half of our community centers don't use it. And actually, I think that's right.
So you start finding whatever they are passionate or interested in, and that will help you
knitting
design.
Or football or gardening or whatever it is. That's the thing. It's not. I mean, probably not government services for most people, but one of the ways we can, Well, but having said that, if you can only get some things online, it kind of it's annoying, but it kind of forces people. There's a cultural change issue, both in government and in our society. So, Martha is an advocate for turning a few things off, not too big, but just to kind of make people clear. We just switched our television from analog to digital, and we don't really have that same driver for inclusion that we did for television.
Okay, wonderful. Who in the audience would like to use this opportunity to ask Graham Walker something? We're shy in Sweden, up north. Yeah.
Yeah.
We want to ask privately
You'll
afterwards.
talk about me afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. That's our way of doing it.
Good.
So I will try to be. Yes, here we have a gentleman. If you could please get a microphone right there in the front. Please raise your hand again, just for the microphone. Yes, please. And please tell us who you are. We don't have the microphone on yet, do we? Is it not turned on? Try. Because this should be recorded as well, so we need a little technical device to work. Yeah.
We can hear her.
I lend you mine in a very cowboy-like way.
All right. My name is Kjell Persson. I work for News Consulting. I like this phrasing, critical friend. So when you go about arguing for these kind of issues, what about, how do you feel about being critical? I mean, this negative, why don't we do more, and you are so, you know, and this friend thing I like very much. Could you say something about it?
Yeah, I in a previous life, I set something up called the Broadband Stakeholder Group in the UK, which was bringing commercial people and government people together to talk about how we made progress 8 or 9 years ago on broadband. And we used the phrase critical, knowledgeable friend, which was, you know, this is a group of people that have knowledge about this subject, and they are your friend in that they want to help make progress, but they also feel that they want to have the right to criticize sometimes or to challenge, yeah? So critical friend really is a phrase that says we will be constructive. You know, we have the same aims, yeah? We will be constructive about the way that and there is a discipline to this, yeah? I mean, you know, there's a discipline to, sometimes not everything goes your way. The government doesn't go fast enough. Something, you know, I used to work in the government, you know, it didn't go fast enough. But that's not a reason for just standing on your box and starting to scream about, you know, the injustice of it all. Because if you decide to be part of a debate and you want to, then you have kind of some responsibility. So, you know, there's a responsibility with that. If you ask for that, please could we be your critical friend? This is how we want to behave. Or you're given that job. Then you need to make sure that your criticism is constructive and comes with some suggested solutions and something that you are also prepared to do as part of that.
Wonderful. Thank you. What about, do we have any, yes, I just asked first, do we have any politicians in the room here this morning? Yes, very important. You will have a great advantage to the rest because you will learn so much. This lady here would like to ask a question.
Thank you.
Who are you, please?
Pardon me?
Your name, please.
I'm a woman, and my name is Inga Grundén.
Thank you.
I come from Senior Net, Sweden, Södermalm. We're a very large active club, and I've started teaching there also. I am most grateful to you if you at least shortly touch on 3 areas which I didn't hear you have any opinions on so far. Number 1, I've been working computers since the late 70s. The security aspect is never mentioned when it comes to this, and I mean identity security. Because you know better than I do that the criminals love the net, besides the porn industry. Quality of content. If we're talking government agencies and these 4 million, they're not as privileged as some others. How do you guarantee some kind of quality on the net for those services? I have seen the most dismal sites for government agencies where it takes me more than an hour not to find what I want.
Yeah.
And number 3, by moving everything online, who is responsible? If I call and talk to a person, whether it's, you know, getting a flight ticket or a government agency, I always take the name, I have the date written down, and I can refer to it later on. And I've seen it in so many other sectors of our lives, that responsibility there isn't none anymore.
Safety, quality, and responsibility.
Yeah, and they're all really tough questions. I'm not sure I can answer them, so I think I should start with that, shouldn't I?
Thank you.
let me take the second one, because the quality of content. You used the word guarantee, and there's no way that we're going to be able to guarantee. We are about, one of the parts of Martha's new job is we're about to start an experiment, really, which is to not rely on just public servants for the quality of the content that the government puts on the web. So we've already been doing a lot to open up data to NGOs and charities and the private sector, and we're about to do that with our information and services and the applications as well. So if there's a benefits calculator that's particularly useful, then everybody should be able to use that on their websites and put it in and put better quality content that they might provide because they know their audience better than government. So that's one of the bits of the vision that Martha sold to the Prime Minister that he was very excited about. So I'm not sure it's a guarantee, but I think we can improve the quality by having groups and organisations that know the clients much better than government does to produce that content around some of the applications that government produces. The other issue about quality is I didn't mention accessibility or usability at all, we have a big issue in the UK where a lot of the government's own websites don't meet accessibility standards, and we have a kind of deadline by March 2011, but I'm still not confident that we're going to make that deadline. So at the minute, I'm not sure whether we should be working harder to mandate that and say you can't be a government website unless you do this by a certain date, or whether there's an issue with the guidelines themselves that actually we should be making some very quick progress on things like every website should be readable with a screen reader, and make some kind of practical steps. It's a really live argument. All I know is it's a real issue, and it means that we have people with disabilities in the UK who are not getting good access to even government websites. So that is a real issue for us, and it's one of our focuses in the next 9 months to a year. We recently had a big round table of all the disability groups to talk about what quick progress we could make in the next year. Security and identity, I'm really honest, I'm not an expert on this. The one thing I would say is what the government, I don't know about Sweden, but in the UK, the government has had every department, every agency is trying to fix this themselves, in terms of how they assure identity and what they do in terms of securing people's identity. And it's a mess, we just haven't really cracked it. So one decision that has definitely been made, in fact, it was in the Prime Minister's speech, you'll find a paragraph which says we're going to have one project to try and crack identity insurance in the UK, bringing together the work that's the existing people are doing so, but we're stopping all the different agencies and departments running their own projects. So there's two parts of that. One is how the government itself assures people's identities, because there's lots of services like benefits, which aren't really the most easily usable services online at the minute. And part of that is because of the nervousness of our big government agencies about assuring people's identity. And so we've got to crack it as an issue. So I haven't completely answered your question, but that's a contribution towards it. And then who's responsible? That's a really good question. I mean, I think we're, I think in the short term, driving more people online to use services, I think ministers know that they're going to have to actually free up more resource for the front line to actually help people with that intermediation in the first thing. In the longer term, I mean, I think, my experience as someone who just uses a lot of private sector online services is it can be quite difficult to find the person that you need to talk to make a complaint. And the difference with government is we don't have that luxury of just deciding that we don't mind that some people aren't our customers. Every citizen is our customer, and we have to offer excellent service. So I can't imagine a point where there isn't a way of ringing and talking to a person at this point. So when I think we talk about 100% online service, I can't see that there's not going to be some form of support. But equally, I can't see us having 15 places in one community all doing slightly different things that are your gateway in. I can see a huge rationalisation of what local and central government has as its physical office space locally, if I'm honest.
Thank you. 2 short questions before our coffee break. Your obvious focus then on the 4 millions, does this mean that you ignore the others that would also need to raise their awareness within there? Because we talk a lot about that we tend to speak, are you unplugged or not?
Yeah.
But there is a lot of potential.
Yeah. Well, I guess the main point to make is, if you focus on, of our 10 million, if we focus on the 6 million easiest, then we certainly will be stuck with the 4. Pretty much most of the things that we are doing to try and support the 4 million will benefit
Automatically
the others as well. I mean, things like, in fact, we have to be, things like the Pass It On campaign, help someone like you. It will, it will help as many, if not more, people in the team. It will spread, So we don't have a fence around any activity we do. It's a discipline. If you focus that it definitely will help people in this group, then it will have a wider benefit.
Thank you. And then lastly, you will stay here a little while in Sweden. And what would you like? What would be, if we could try to do some matchmaking here?
Oh, there's so many things I'd like to learn, but I guess that we have 3 large groups: our over 65, our workless adults, and our adults in families. That's our focus in terms of what are the right interventions that we should be making to support these groups. And so, and when you get down to this last 4 million, it gets quite granular. People's, someone said to me, everyone has got their own bespoke needs. Well, that's really tough. But I'm really interested in anyone who is working with those particular groups of people, who have particular solutions, have ideas. My only caveat is we work at scale, so I'm looking for things that, even if it's a small project, I want it to have the ability.
Include it, yeah. Wonderful. Could people ask Staffan then to book in your agenda, if that's okay? Staffan, who was here talking, if you wish to have a meeting and share with your experiences or ask more. So when are you leaving
I'm staying
for Sweden?
till tomorrow lunchtime.
Tomorrow lunch. Okay, so we have a while. Wonderful. We are just about to enjoy the exhibition here with a number of exciting places like 10-förvaltningen och Folkbildningsrådet och Medborgarexo and all kinds of things. So don't miss that. Enjoy your coffee. But first of all, thank you, Graham Walker, for this inspirational start. Thank you indeed.
Thank you.
Go Britain, yes. And we'll meet again 5:11 ses vi här igen. Mycket nöje med kaffet.